Hello everyone. Today's interview is with Kavindya Thennakoon, and we are okay.
That was totally my bad.
That's all right. So we'll be doing the session in 3 time zones. So good morning for people who are from joining me from USA, and good evening for people who are joining from Sri Lanka, and I'm joining from UK. So I'm in between. So I'll try to give a small introduction for Kavindya. It's very hard to make it a short introduction because that's a long list of things to tell. So Kavindya is a co-founder and head of projects at Without Borders. It's a social enterprise that works on designing innovative education models that help connect grassroots educators with emerging research and best practices. And she is one of the first Queen's Young Leaders Award winners. And also, she likes to study anthropology and film production. She has studied at Wellesley College, Massachusetts, and the University of Oxford. Currently, she is based in New York and also works at MIT Media Lab Center for Civic Media. In the past, she has worked with the United Nations, Youth Advisory Panel in Sri Lanka, Transparency International, the Harvard Kennedy School Car Center, and also MTV and NBC Network. So that's a long list, Kavindya, and welcome to the interview. So let's start off by picking out things I missed. So tell us about yourself and your education and where you all started.
Yeah, so I think you gave a good introduction. I think you covered everything.
All right.
But the work I do is mainly focused around anthropology and really understanding how can we think about problems through a human-centric perspective. How do we understand people better? How do we understand solutions better? And in terms of like an industry or an area, much of the work I do is focused on education. So we work with local schools. We are currently working with the Ministry of Education at the moment to really see how we can change the schools, how we can change curriculums, how we can help young people think creatively and critically. So yeah, that's what I do.
All right, that's cool. So let's go more in deep to talk about your organization Without Borders. So tell us how it all started and what motivated you to start that, and what sort of experience you got through that.
Yeah, so we started Without Borders in 2014.
Okay.
We didn't have a big vision of even starting an organization. I remember my co-founder and we were sitting and trying to figure out a way to get volunteer teachers.
Yeah.
And we realized we needed to come up with a name. So that's how we came with Without Borders, because we have no idea of even a name for the organization. Yeah. So simply what we wanted to do was, I was raised in this area called Deraniyagala for a long part of my life. And the priest from the village temple reached out and asked if we can teach English to the kids who who live in the area. And so we just thought we'll get a bunch of people together from Colombo and the outskirts and just travel every week and do a couple of sessions. Okay. So we didn't have a cent. I remember I probably had like 500 rupees in my purse at that time.
Okay.
It was not funded. We had no idea what we wanted to do. We had a community that was a problem and we just wanted to solve it. Okay. But it was after that we realized there was so much research happening in the sector. There's so much that we could do, and then things kind of took on from there. Yeah.
Okay, that's really inspiring. So so let's talk about the education system in Sri Lanka. So you are an activist who talks about educational reforms in Sri Lanka, and so what's your idea about the education system in Sri Lanka right now, and what sort of changes you think needs to be added?
Yeah, I think the education system we have at the moment is designed for a child of like 50 to 30 years ago. Okay. And I think the curriculum is outdated, our teaching methods are outdated, and even the way our classrooms are arranged are extremely outdated. Okay. So I think that's where the first change needs to happen. We really need to understand, what does a child of today need to know? What are the skills they need to have? What are the values they need to have? And what kind of a world will they go into? Because today we're preparing children who, for example, a child who's going to grade 1 or pre-grade, we don't even know what the world is going to look like when they're going into the job market. We have no idea. So I think it's that we need to prepare students for. And I also think religious segregation in schools it needs to stop now, because it's been a long time.
That's true.
This single Buddhist schools or Muslim-only schools or Tamil-only schools, it just creates separation. And I think we need to do away with that. So there's a lot to change, but in a gist, like updating, rethinking it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you studied at the University of Oxford. So how was that experience, and what did you study there?
Yeah, so after I studied for 2 years at Wellesley, I took an year at Oxford. I was studying anthropology there. I think it was a wonderful experience. It was a beautiful city. But I think it was a very different experience in that Oxford has a problem with diversity. Oxford has a problem with taking in students who come from extremely upper class backgrounds, who've been to good schools. A lot of students were white. So you rarely see people of color. The conversations you have in classrooms are very different because most of them come from a very high socioeconomic background. So I think that was a problem to me, fitting in, figuring out where my voice was heard in all of this. And even if you look at faculty, it's really hard to find faculty of color. So I learned a lot. I loved my time there, but Oxford definitely has a lot of problems that it needs to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's like an open debate right now. I mean, even in Cambridge. So the minority representation is not enough in those universities. Yeah, that's true. So moving on from Oxford to MIT, so like two very famous universities. So what do you do at MIT Media Lab, and how did you get into Media Lab?
So MIT Media Lab is a new project that I'm going to start. So the Civic Media Center is doing a research in looking at movies, mainstream movies in both Hollywood and Bollywood, but particularly looking at Bollywood. And what we're focusing on is movies that have sparked action. So by action, I mean movies that led people to talk about a certain issue, movies that led people to come out on the streets and protest, movies that made people think differently about certain issues. And this could be gender, it could be race, it could be women's rights, you name it. And what we're trying to do is to analyze these movies and try to figure out what is it in these movies that led people to take action by just watching a movie. And they also work with a production company based in India, seeing how we can replicate those models and really spark action through film, through movies. So I'm very excited to start off with the team. It's a great team there. So very excited for the next couple of months.
Okay, so you get to watch a lot of movies for your research, right?
I know it's great because I'm literally, when people ask me what you do, I was like, I watch movies 24/7. That's all I do.
Yeah, that's true.
Great. I'm not complaining at all.
Win-win situation. Yeah. So when we talk about Kavindya, that's one thing we cannot talk about. It's the Queen's Young Leader Award. So you got a lot of fame for that, and we saw a lot of in newspapers, on media. So how was that experience? And I mean, for what did you get the award, and how did you feel, and how was that experience?
Yeah, so how I got the award was I was nominated by one of my mentors. I'm a girl guide. I'm a very proud girl guide. So my mentor from the Girl Guide Association was the person who sent in my nomination. So that was really exciting for me to, hear back from them. And then I also sent in an application afterwards where they asked questions about, the work I do and stuff like that.
Yes.
So what I got it for would probably be the work that we did through Without Borders, and also some of the work that I had done in the gender, sex education space. Great. I think for me, like, meeting the Queen was great, but there was also David Beckham in the same room. I think I think that beats the Queen slightly. I think it was much more than the award. In all honesty, we had an amazing director who led our learning program, Francis. I learned so much from the program, and I think what Without Borders is today, and how we've evolved as an organization, and how I've kind of evolved as a leader, is really because of the training we got. So
Okay.
it was much, I think the award was just a very small component of the whole thing. It was more to do with the training and the networks we built.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
so what kind of a training you had there? So is it like workshops or
yeah,
what?
yeah. So the training was a 9 month long training program that was designed by the University of Cambridge with different other partners and trainers.
Yeah.
So a component of it was online. So we worked on an online workspace. We went through modules, we did activities, mainly online. We were connected with mentors. We had like one-on-one advisory sessions and all of that. And then we were at Cambridge for I think close to I think 4 to 5 days. I think now it's a week,
Okay.
where we were on site working with mentors, figuring out organization structures, and going on like workshops and things like that. So, and even now it's been 2 years, but we still get access to all the trainings, all the content, all the mentors. So it's a lifelong process, and you make such a strong network of incredible leaders, and I think that's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think we can have these kind of programs in Sri Lanka as well for students? So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think for the longest time we've thought about leadership as seminars or like 2 day workshop or
yeah,
something very short term.
yeah,
But I think what Sri Lanka needs, what we need, is to identify local leaders in whatever space it might be. It could be education, it could be gender, it could be politics, whatever. To identify authentic, driven young leaders and to give them long term intensive training and mentorship,
yeah,
because a 1 day 2 day workshop is not going to change anything.
yeah.
So I think what we need to work on is like long term models that really stick with these young people for a long time. So yeah, for sure, I think something like that would make such a difference here.
Yeah. So we got one of questions from viewers. So Dulan Das asked, how can undergraduates from Sri Lanka maybe join MIT Media Lab for research on the available super innovative research areas?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm not a techie. um you would know this because I couldn't figure out Facebook Live for the longest time. But if you head out to the MIT Media Lab space, the best thing would be to personally reach out to the directors, because the lab has a lot of mini labs underneath, different projects that are happening all the time.
Yeah.
I think the best thing would be to individually reach out to the supervisors, individually reach out to if there's a director of the lab that you're interested in working in, write to them, talk to them about your expertise, your research areas, and try to build those one-on-one connections. Because a lot of them don't have open application processes that open. Some of them do, but most of them don't.
Yeah.
And also, the Media Lab does a lot of research in India.
Okay.
So which means that you don't necessarily have to be in Boston to work with the lab.
Yeah.
So I think for sure, like check out the labs that work in India. I think there's also work that happens in Singapore. I'm not really sure, but really look at like what's happening in South Asia and then try to connect that, because I think that's expertise we bring in. Besides, if you're a techie, your tech experience, yes, but also the fact that you have worked in South Asia as a region.
Yeah.
So definitely email, cold email. That's the best thing.
Yeah, so to add to that, I think it's more effective to reach out to people who are not in the top layer, but a second layer or the third layer.
Exactly.
Because if you
Yeah,
take a professor or someone, they get a lot of emails and they might not
for sure.
respond. Yeah, so
Yeah,
you might have a better chance if you reach out to maybe just a doctor or a postdoc.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so
Or even like try to reach out to, if a research assistant's email is on it, just try to reach out to them and see, are there openings, like how can I better make a case, like do you have any recommendations and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah, but
that's
if
true.
anyone's interested, like feel free to drop me a message and I'll be happy to like figure out things for you. So yeah,
Okay,
reach out.
okay, all right. So let's go back to what you did in Sri Lanka. So you have a a lot of things you have worked on. So what did you do at United Nations? How was that experience
Yeah, so
with the?
the UN was very interesting. So I worked as the UN, basically the United Nations country team in Sri Lanka set up the UN Youth Advisory Panel, which
Yes.
was an initiative by the UN Youth and Boys Office. So the idea was that they were going to bring a group of young people who were experts in their different areas, and they were trying to see how we can better involve young people at a policymaking level, to bring young people's voice to the table, and to really shift the way policies were made, and to give young people a real voice, not just tokenistic, where you just do a survey or have a focus group discussion and say, all right, like youth participation ticked off or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was involved with them for 2 years, and I think the program is not there anymore.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Is that fine?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything's cool.
Okay.
That's some
Technical
nice. Of course, we face this stuff.
Because we're
So
testing this for the first time.
I didn't hear you.
We're testing this for the first time in 3
Exactly.
countries. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So many difficulties, of course. So we were discussing about your message to the Sri Lankan youth and for Sri Lankan girls. I mean, I think there are so many people who look up to you. So I mean, what is your message for them? And imagine if they face difficulties, especially girls in Sri Lanka, they face a lot of difficulties when they try to do even in their studies, when it comes to jobs. So how to tackle them,
Even
and
walking
what's
on
your?
the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many issues. So what is the
Okay,
message
let
for
me
them?
answer into 2. I think for girls, I know we always say, if someone says something at you, ignore, prashna daganna epa.
Yeah,
These are the usual things you hear, right? Bima balagana yanna. Or like if you're in the bus, like මොන හරි කිව්වොත් එහෙම මේවා කරන්න එපා. ආයි මොන හරි කිව්වොත් එහෙම වගේ පිටිපස්සෙන් ආවොත් එහෙම.
yeah,
You always tell girls to be quiet. You always ask girls to be silent. And like I said before, if you're silent in the face of injustice, if you're silent in the face of wrong, it means you're endorsing it. You're saying it's okay. So I think my first message to young girls would be stand up and speak up for yourself. It is really hard, but you have to do it. I mean, obviously, in situations where your life at risk, just run away. But besides that, try to, as much as possible, to. I think I'm getting.
okay. Yeah, I can hear
Let
you.
me try.
Yeah,
Okay, you can hear me, right? Perfect.
yeah,
Yeah. So, like what I was saying, just speak up. Figure out what you want to do. If you want to start university, if you want to start your own business, if you want to get a job, if you want to stay at home, get married, have kids, figure out what you want to do and then chase it. And I think the third thing would be women need to support other women. And that's a fundamental, because I think a lot of strong women become insecure around other strong women. And that's something that I've gone through myself. Like, I've always felt that if I worked under a strong boss or if I had a very strong female colleague, that I was being threatened. Because women are always, we always have to do things twice as harder. We always have to put twice the effort. So
yeah,
support each other and realize that we're all in this together. And same goes to men as well. Figure out your space here and figure out what you want to do and see how you can, again, not remain silent, take action, speak up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's true. I mean, I think it's not just women's role. I think men also have a bigger role, not to keep them out
Absolutely.
shut. And yeah, you have to like speak up, and they have a bigger
Yeah.
role, I think. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's
And
very
even
important.
if you're going in the bus or if you're going on the road, I mean, I think every woman has gone through some sort of, and men too, even
Yeah,
in buses, men get harassed, women get harassed. And I think a lot of us see things and we just remain silent because
yeah,
we think, no, it's not my problem. Like, why should I bother? And I think that's the mentality among a lot of us, not just Sri Lankans, but just the world in general. And I think that needs to change. We need to look out for each other. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
Uh,
So I think every person has their mentors and idols. So who are your mentors and whom you look up to?
yeah, I think mentorship is so important. I come from a very ordinary, normal family, and for me to really break open those doors, to really break those barriers and do what I wanted to do and become the best version of myself, it would be my mentors, because they're the ones who opened those doors that were shut at me. I've had two incredible mentors that have been with me for many years. I mean, I've had more, but I think the two most important ones would be Dr. Tisujina Sena, who's like one of Sri Lanka's most prominent engineers and businessmen, has been such a great mentor to Without Borders and my team, helping us figure out our direction, helping us restructure, helping us get over a lot of financial barriers. So he's been such a great mentor to me. And secondly, um, a mentor that I met during my time at the UN country team was Antonia Demure, who was the deputy rep for UNICEF at the time, who has been a great friend, a good advisor, an amazing mentor, who actually got me to come to Wellesley. So I think the reason why I'm here today is very much a part of her guidance, her talking on behalf of me, advocating for me, and things like that. So I think all of us need that kind of mentorship, that kind of guidance to really break open those doors. So to the two of them, and also all the mentors that have, all my teachers, everybody who's really helped me through. I think you always need people to talk to get advice from, to get a third party opinion from. So I think mentorship is such an important thing, and I think it's up and rising in Sri Lanka as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the problems when, I mean, personally, I faced as well. So if you want to find a mentor, so how do you reach out to them? I mean, how do you approach them? Imagine if you don't come across mentors, not in your school. I mean, teachers and
Yeah.
professors, they become automatically mentors. But if you want to find a
Yeah.
mentor who's not in your contact, how do you reach out to them and
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question because I'm a bad networker. I'm really bad at going after people and like introducing myself and being like, oh,
Yeah,
can you be my mentor? Like, can I have
yeah,
coffee with you at some point?
yeah,
I'm terrible at that. So one of the things I've done, firstly, organic relationships. So how I met Antonia was, I mean, I gave a speech at the parliament when I was 16 or something,
all right.
and she was in the audience that day. And I think that just changed my entire life because that's how she met me, and I followed up with her. And she actually reached out to me about this youth advisory panel, and we kept in touch and things like that. So one of the most important things is to reach out. Send that cold email, call them up. If you see someone somewhere and you think that's an interesting person, he or she is from the industry that I'm interested in, go up to them and be like, I'm so and so. I would be really interested in having a conversation with you. I'm looking for a mentor at this point in time, and I would be really happy to see if there's a possibility of you mentoring me at some point.
Yeah,
And just put yourself out there. I think
yeah,
that's the best way to do it. And email, just
yeah,
send emails. I think for
yeah,
me, my metric of success is sending 10 emails to people that I have never met every week.
yeah.
I don't always do that, but I try to do that because I think that's the best way to get advice, meet new people, and build connections. So send emails, reach out.
Yeah.
That would be the
Yeah,
best tip.
that's important. I mean, for the viewers, so if you have any questions, you can comment in, ask questions. We'll ask from Kavindya. So we got a question from Duran. Do you hope to one day return to Sri Lanka and contribute here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think
Okay.
that the world has changed so much today. I mean, you would agree with me that you don't have to be in Sri Lanka to contribute back.
Yeah.
Um, I think the concept of home has changed so much that I am in Sri Lanka at least 6 months of the year, but I'm also working here. I'm doing my research here. I ran Without Borders for 4 years now. And 3 out of that 4 years, I wasn't even permanently in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I think whatever I do here abroad beyond Sri Lanka would always depend on how is this going to contribute to the work I do back home? So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So let's look at your life goals. I mean, what do you want to achieve in life? So imagine 20, 30 years time, what do you want to become? So what's your end goal?
I think 15, 20 years down the line, I want to work with the Ministry of Education at some point.
Okay.
Not as like a minister or anything, but I think the power in Sri Lankan ministries lie with the ministry secretary, is
Yeah,
what
that's
I've
true.
figured out in my past,
Yeah.
mm, you know, 5 years of experience. So I think I really want to work in that sort of an administrative position at the ministry at some point. Because I feel like that's where change happens. Those are the people who have the real power to drive the change. So I'm extremely passionate about education because I think if there's one place that can change Sri Lanka, that is the education system.
Okay.
And I think I strongly, fiercely believe in that. And I think for the next 20 to 15 years, I think that's where my focus would lie from a professional career standpoint.
Okay. So we got a question from my mother. So she has asked,
Oh,
yeah, what sort of plans do you have for Sri Lanka for the development? So what are your ideas?
yeah. I think we spoke about the education system a lot. So I
Yes.
think so there are changes in curriculum, changes in the teacher training methods, changes in how our examinations are held, changes in how students are admitted to our local universities, changes in our local university curriculums, more focus on career education, guidance in terms of moving kids from school to the university to the world of work or from school to the world of work because there's such a gap between these three areas and where technical colleges come into place and all of that. The second thing is running for public office. I think we need politicians who are smart, who are
Yes.
educated, who have a vision, and who are policy driven. And for that to happen, we need vote education. We need people to vote smart. We need people
Yeah.
who are aware of what's happening in the parliament. We need people who are aware of the
Yeah.
political candidates who are running in the electorate. Because many of us don't know. Because the information is all over the place. We don't know how to access our on our public representatives, and that gives them a free ticket to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So I think smarter politicians and smarter voters and citizens for sure. And we need voter education in curriculums, in syllabuses. I think just as
Yeah.
science, history is important, civic education is important. Voting, voter rights, how do you vote
Yeah.
for the right candidate? What is happening in parliament? I think those things are important. Um, there's a lot to
Yeah, I think
change,
if we sort
honestly.
of
So,
fix the,
I,
yeah, so if we can fix
yeah,
the
go on.
voters' mindset and make them smarter, yeah, make them smarter, I think at the end of the day, we get smarter politicians
Yeah,
elected to the parliament. So I think that's where the root cause is.
absolutely.
I mean, problem is, uh,
Yeah,
so because people don't know how to pick the right politicians, and that leads to electing corrupted politicians. I think that's a major issue. So I think that's right, what you
yeah,
mentioned.
no, for sure. And also
Yeah.
like information, because so many people today are basing all their decisions, all their political opinions on WhatsApp messages they get. And
Yeah.
I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I think we really need to change the way people understand information and access information as well. So again, like smarter people. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got a question. So when you say changes in how exams are held, what exactly do you propose? Uh, that's a question.
With the exam. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is this. Literacy is a given now. We expect everybody to be literate. And today, access to education, simply being able to read and write, does not guarantee that you can escape poverty. There are so many people who are able to read and write but are still below the poverty line.
Yes.
So I think what we need is access to quality, relevant education. And in that context, testing testing a child's ability to memorize 1 year's worth of work or 2 years worth of work and just spill it onto a paper under 2 hours or 3 hours does not say anything about anyone, because
Yes.
that is testing your ability to memorize in most of the cases. And the other point is there are so many children who learn in very different ways. There are multiple intelligences in the world, but exams cater to just a very minute niche in the way people study and learn. And I think what we need to shift towards is look at people's critical thinking skills, their problem solving skills, their creativity, how well they're able to think around real life situations, make education more practical, more innovative. And I think for that, exams are needed for sure, because you need that quantifiable data at some point, but it needs to be mixed with so many other ways of assessing and evaluating children. Because for now, A levels and O levels are putting students into depression. There are children who are committing suicide because of A level results and O level results. And I think that level of stress is just sad. And I don't think we should put children through that or anyone through that. So I think that is what should change with the exam culture. And also the grade 5 scholarship exam. There are students in grade 2, 1 who are going for tuition.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind. These are kids who should be playing and watching cartoons, going out on walks with their friends, whatever. So yeah, exams need to change, and how we approach exams need to change.
Yeah, I think also we should look at alternate higher education method, as you mentioned about technical schools, and how sort of we can just make students aware that there are other ways you can find a job and even earn more money rather than going in the like what you have been trained and told by your teachers or your parents. So these kind of things
Yeah,
are quite important as well, I think. So we've got another
no, for
question.
sure.
Yeah. So Madhushani asked, how do you plan to get others involved in this mission? There are so many individuals and organizations out there who do share the same mission. What are your plans for them?
Yeah, I think we briefly touched on this on a previous conversation we had as well. I think in
Yeah.
every industry we look at, whether it's education, tech, whatever, we're so fragmented because we're all working in our little silos. We don't know what everyone else is doing. We don't know what the ministry is doing. We don't know what the provincial education officers are doing. So I think a first step would be to kind of bring everyone together, to really talk about what are we doing? What are our strengths? How do we come together towards a common vision, and what is our common vision? I think that's one of the first things that should be done to really bring all of us together, who are working in the
Yeah.
same sector, who have the same vision. I'm just only talking about the education sector. Um,
Yes.
and second thing, for people who are interested, go into your community, look at the schools, see what are the problems are, see what are the kids doing, do they have enough teachers, what are the subjects that there's like a deficiency of teachers for, and reach out to your networks, reach out to organizations like yours and Without Borders and the ministry, whatever, and try to take action in your community, because that's what we need community leaders who are aware and who are ready to take action, because there's so much
Yeah.
that a couple of state organizations can do. There's so much that a couple of NGOs can do. We need community leaders coming from the community itself, ordinary people who are ready to take action. So I think for individuals, go to your schools, go to your divisional secretariat, get a list of all the schools that is in your area, visit the schools, talk to the principals, ask them what the problems are, ask them how we can help, and see what are the other problems in your community, and start there first. And I think that's the critical point. Start at your community, start at your village, start at the town you're in, the lane you're in, whatever it might be.
Okay. So people try like this, try very hard. at one point they get fed up. So then starts the brain drain. People leave the country. I mean, it's a very common scenario. People leave Sri Lanka, go to other countries, and I mean they worry for some time and then they give up the fight. So how do you
Yeah.
think we can solve this issue? I mean, is that a solvable problem in your point of view?
I don't think even in the next 10 to 15 years that could be solved. Because I think
Yeah.
for us, we thought about multiple times of just stopping. Because you see people who are 10 to 20 years older than many of us, questioning our ability to drive change, not giving us
Yes.
the space we want. And the space, by space, I mean just a 20-minute, 15-minute meeting. There have been government
Yeah.
officers who've just been like, we don't have time for you. Or people who've been like, oh, the work you do is irrelevant, like these systems cannot be changed. Government officers who strongly believe that the system cannot be changed. And that speaks a lot. And then we think, why should we bother? Why should we care? Why should we listen to all these negativity from so many people and still like keep fighting? Like, why do we do that? Um,
Yeah.
but I think the important thing is you need to understand that Sri Lanka is not just the government. Sri Lanka is not just the public officers. Sri Lanka is much more than that. So if your vision is for the community, if your vision is for the population of this country, then you shouldn't let all that negativity that comes from these centers of power or the bureaucracy or the system let you down. And I also think that there are so many ways of contributing back, even if you're abroad. So even if you want to, because I know a lot of people who are in the who are in STEM fields, who are in tech fields, who don't have opportunities here, then is it fair for us to say you should stay here and contribute back? Because if you can thrive in a different country, go for it. But there are so many ways of contributing back in ways better than what you could have done if you were in Sri Lanka. So I think it's about thinking around
Yeah.
these issues creatively and in different ways. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you don't have to physically be in Sri Lanka. I mean, in this world right now, so you can actually be abroad and contribute more. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I mean, I
yeah.
mentor like
So
teachers in Banatavilu on WhatsApp, and that blows my
okay.
mind. Like, these kids are like 9,000 miles away, and
Yeah.
we sort out classroom issues, we discuss new ideas, I put them in touch with training material on WhatsApp, and that's
Okay.
crazy. Yeah, so it's possible.
So so how many teachers you sort of mentor in this way in your WhatsApp groups?
So this was a pilot program that we started. So we have 38 teachers at the moment that we are mentoring. So I mentor
Okay.
about two or
Okay.
three teachers in a given round. So we
Okay.
match them up with mentors who come from. So if you take a maths teacher, we take someone who's an engineer or who's done maths but who is in a professional field now, so that teachers are able to kind of relate the work they do to the real world and to situate that in like a real world context. And it's more focused on giving them access to ideas, new ways of thinking and stuff like that. So we have 38 teachers that are mentored, and we have about 4 people now who are actually living abroad and still mentoring, including myself. So
Okay.
yeah, it works.
So what sort of problems I mean these teachers have? So what are the common issues they have? Any way we could help as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems for teachers is that they have so many great ideas that they want to do in terms of new teaching methods, changing the way the classroom is and things like that, but there's no money to do that because schools don't have a stationary fund for teachers, or schools don't have little fund they can allocate for teachers who are trying to do creative things. So that's one of the biggest problems. The second thing is
Yeah.
obviously infrastructure is a problem. Many of these areas, they really want to show videos in their classrooms. They want to uh, get the kids to browse the internet. They want to get resources off the internet, but there's no internet connection. There's like no 3G, no 4G in these areas. So I think mobile network providers have a huge role to play to get schools connected to the internet.
Okay.
And I think if telcos can come together, I think that.
Hello. Okay, you're back again. Okay.
We're back. Third
Okay.
try. We're back.
Yeah, not bad. So we got some questions from the previous video. I'll try to get those.
Cover them.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So again, one question from my mom. So she asked, "Don't you think there should be a channel or medium to which people can contribute? Do we have any?" So
Yeah, I think it really depends on where your skills are and how you would like to contribute. I think there's so many ways, obviously financially, there are so many ways of sponsoring teachers, sponsoring students. There are so many scholarship funds that are out here where you can actually sponsor like one-on-one. But
yeah.
I think at this point, all of those channels are there and those are really important. And also like the programs that we run where you can actually like mentor a teacher one-on-one in whatever industry you have expertise in or whatever subject area you have expertise in. But I think besides that, we also need Sri Lankan professors, designers, techies, educators, um, who are living abroad, who have not kind of been involved in the education space before, to come back with ideas. Because I
Yes.
think at the moment, what we need to get in touch with best practices, new teaching methods, new education models that are happening, new ways that other countries are looking at of how students can be kind of taken from school to either university or vocational training and then connected with the world of work. Because I think we need to like streamline that process better. So I think people to come up with ideas, people to test run pilot projects, to test run ideas. I so yeah, but the problem is like with issues like that, there's no channel that you'll have to create that channel yourself. You will have to reach out yourself because there's no like set structure that you can kind of follow.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah.
Okay, so we've come to like our final question. So people who are watching in, if you have questions, you can ask. So I can ask from Kavindya. So you are a well-traveled person. I mean, you've traveled into many countries, and so what do you see different from Sri Lanka in those countries, and what as a country, what we can learn?
Um yeah, I think I'll start with the positives. I think we're an extremely friendly country.
Okay.
I think there's something very human about Sri Lanka. Um, I mean, we have so many problems, but besides all of that, I think as a culture, as a community, we connect with people better. We know what our neighbors are up to. We reach out to each other. If there's a funeral, we're all there. We're helping out. If there is a wedding, we're all there. We're helping out. And you don't see that connectivity, that sense of community, when you come, beyond like to Europe or the West.
Yeah.
So I think those are positives. But I think from from a more of like how can we improve, how can we look at other countries and improve, I think if you look at Finland, they have an amazing education system that really rethinks the entire way we think about education and how we approach children and stuff like that. So that's great. And I also think that there are so many countries, especially um, I I wouldn't say the US is great in terms of a lot of things, but in terms of bringing young entrepreneurship, bringing new ideas, creating space for people who are free thinkers, who are thinking about innovative products and ideas, I think there's such a good space for that here. And also, especially here, it's not about your parents or how big your bank account is or how well connected you are. It's about your talent. It's about the ideas you bring in. It's about your qualification. So I think that needs to shift in Sri Lanka because still they would check your surname, they would check what area you were born in, they would check your mother's job, your father's job. That determines your life chances. And I think that needs to change in Sri Lanka for sure. Yeah.
Okay. That's nice. So what is your take on private education, private universities, and public universities in Sri Lanka? So there's been a big debate about it. So what's
Ooh,
your take on that?
yeah. Ha, we get so much hate for this. Here's the deal. Um,
Okay.
Everyone needs to have access to education. Everyone does.
Yes.
Um, Firstly, higher education needs to have standards. There needs to be metrics. There needs to be quality assurance. There needs to be mechanisms to ensure that the people who go out with this BA or MBA or whatever title is worthy of that title, and that the education is of a high quality. For sure, that's a given. Secondly, um, the local education space has so much capacity. There's so many students that you can take in. And I think the local education space has so many problems that need to be solved first before there is an attack on the private education sector. So I think it's more like when you have 100,000 like things wrong on your end, you really can't point fingers at others and being like, what about your standards when you don't have standards yourself?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And also our schools have problems. There are problems everywhere. But I think that to
Yeah.
deny someone else their right to education, uh, because you have issues with the standards or because you think it's unfair, because you think they're not as smart as you are, is is problematic. And I think denying anyone any right to education is wrong. It's problematic. And I think what what people protesting the private education sector needs to think about is that there are better ways of doing that. There are more productive ways of doing that. Their issues are valid 100%, but there are so many other productive ways of actually bringing about change than disruption.
Yeah.
You can't just keep fighting without there being a change. You need to have ways that bring about a change. So, yeah. And I think private education is here to stay. It's not going to go. That's
Yeah.
inevitable.
As well as I
Yeah,
think we should promote like open education. Like there are so many ways that you can take online courses, and I mean
exactly.
now people can learn from home, and those materials are even better than what we get in our universities. And not everyone knows this stuff. You
Exactly.
can get the
Yeah,
online certificates and stuff like that. So I think
yeah,
there should be a movement about sharing these things with people and making them aware that there are other ways that you can, not just the private or the public universities, you can have open access degrees that you can take. So I think these
yeah.
are
And
ways that
for
we can
sure,
solve these issues.
yeah. And I think some of these courses, I mean, there's a price tag attached, but most of them are free access. I mean, Wellesley has free courses that they offer with a certification that comes at the end. Harvard does, Johns Hopkins does, Oxford does, Cambridge does. All like the top universities in the world are moving into these new models where you don't have to be physically present or you don't even have to have the money. And I think that's why I
Yeah.
say that you need to rethink education. Education is not about getting into a university and getting this piece of paper and being there for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. It's about what you learn. It's about how you grow as a person. It's about your love of learning. It's not the love of that
Yeah,
diploma or piece of paper you get or the name of the institution. So, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
that's true.
Completely agree with
I mean,
that.
if you take people like Peter Thiel, I mean, they sort of promote students not to go to universities. So if they are a good
Yeah,
idea, they would actually fund you to make that project or do that business, and like avoid from going on for like wasting 5 years on 4 or 5 years in university, doing something like
yeah,
very generic thing rather than you can do your own business. So I think those things are really good. I mean, for people who want to follow these things, and we should
yeah,
promote this thing rather than sticking into what we've been taught in the past. So I think these are
yeah,
interesting things we can
sure.
talk in the future. So I'll ask a tricky question. So imagine you can talk to your 12-year-old self. What would you tell
My
her?
my 20-year-old self. My
12-year-old,
20-year-old
not
self.
20.
Oh, my
12,
12-year. I
1,
was like, oh, that's like
yeah.
1, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say just because all the boys in your class called you bossy doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Being bossy means that you are being loud, you're being bold, you're being smart. So keep being bossy. That's what I would tell my 12-year-old self. Because I was really harassed for being bossy, for being loud. And yeah, that's what I would tell my 12-year-old self. Be bossy, be loud. Yeah.
Okay. So imagine, so you win a uh, $1 million lottery. What would you do with it?
Like today.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll go home. I'll go back home to Sri Lanka. Yeah,
All right.
I'll just go back home. Yeah, I'll totally go back home. And probably invest half of it for with our border stuff. Um,
Okay.
take my mom on a fully paid vacation around the world. Yeah, I think those two things. Investing with our borders, take my mom on like a fully paid vacation. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
If anyone wants
So
to meet me,
let's check.
it's open.
Yeah. I mean, there will
Anyone
be
watch?
like donors who would actually, yeah. There are a lot of people
Right?
watching this
Yeah,
video,
I'm
so
totally
I'm
open.
sure.
If you want to send any dollars my
Yeah.
way, please do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So let's wait. Okay, let's see if there are any questions. So, guys, if you have any questions, you can ask. So it seems we've. Okay, so I think it's time for us to start the session today.
Yeah, it's been an hour.
Yeah, so we'll do a similar one again, and it's been like a fun session, like talking to you, the things you have done,
Yeah,
and you've
absolutely.
been,
For sure. Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
yeah, and it's been an inspiration for
Awesome.
us and for most of the Sri Lankans. And thank you very much for joining us, and keep doing what you're doing. So thank you
Yeah,
everyone
you
for
too.
joining
Thank
as
you so
well.
much for having me. This is fun. This is great. So have a good Saturday, Sunday,
Yeah,
wherever you
yeah,
might be. Yeah,
yeah.
awesome.
Okay. All right. See you.
Talk soon then. Bye.
Okay. Bye.